Now we do turn to an important story sparking some big debates online. It's an issue Crystal mentioned on our program recently. In an article for the science magazine Pacific Standard, Amanda Hess asked why women aren't welcome on the internet. Women face the vast majority of threats and harassment online. Over 70% of people who reported harassment from 2000 to 2012 were women, according to a watchdog group. And you don't need to be a celebrity or a prominent writer to face this kind of wrath. Women who post comments or tweets or are featured even in news stories often find themselves subject to harsh and sexual harassment. Many say women should basically ignore it or, quote, grow a thicker skin or just get off social media if they don't like what they find. Is that right? Well, our next guest argues that type of thinking misses the whole point. Amanda Hess wrote this month's cover story for Pacific Standard. She's written about technology and Hollywood for Wired, Slate, and the LA Times. Welcome to you, Amanda, and tell us why that kind of advice, that kind of thinking is, in your view, off base.
Well, I think that we've seen women being harassed offline, for as long as we've been charting that phenomenon, and we have certain laws to address that. Laws against sexual harassment in the workplace, laws against domestic violence, emerging laws against street harassment. And I see no reason why we shouldn't extend those same laws to a similar phenomenon that's happening on the internet.
Well, and Amanda, that's part of the problem here, right? Because you receive these threats online. And by the way, I think this is a story that basically every woman with an online profile can relate to. But you receive these threats online, and then what do? Do you call your local police? Do you call the FBI? Who has jurisdiction? What is the current legal structure? Is it equipped to deal with these kinds of online threats?
Well, as a victim, it's very confusing to know what to do. On the one hand, we have a lot of laws in place that could conceivably be applied to online threats. So in my home state of California, it's a crime to threaten bodily harm against another person. There are also cyber stalking and cyber harassment laws in place in many states across the United States. But what I found when I called 911, when I received my most sort of recent bout of threats, is that the police officer who came to my door didn't even understand what Twitter was, had no idea how to investigate such a crime, and I'm not even sure knew that it was criminal. So it's hard to know what to do when you're put in that situation.
Well, and I want to echo Crystal's point, Amanda. Any woman that's on social media understands how real this is. If the law does not change, how do we begin to tackle this? Obviously, it's only going to get worse as a society, as parents. When I have young sisters on social media, I worry about this all the time. This is not just about growing a thicker skin. What else can we do to help them?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer. One thing is, not to dismiss threats and harassment against women as something that's merely virtual. For me and for many women I've spoken with, it's clear that it becomes not just an emotional burden, but an economic one. We have to spend time, scrubbing the internet of our personal information, making sure we have security when we speak in public. Going through the court system and the legal system, that's probably not going to end up helping us, but that gives us a bit of peace of mind. So one thing is to just not dismiss it out of hand. But beyond that, it's a bit difficult because on the one hand, police officers and police forces don't have, many resources to deal with this problem. And platforms like Twitter have all the resources in the world, but they don't necessarily have the power to really legitimately address crimes against their users.
Well, I'm not totally sure I agree with you on that very last point about Twitter's power or Facebook's power. I mean, if you were in a real establishment, a restaurant, a bar, and a woman is being harassed, the establishment would first try to intervene and stop that harassment. These are virtual places, but they are places. Shouldn't we be looking to Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, to say, hey, why are you protecting these attackers? Shouldn't you be making this world more amenable for your women users?
I think that that's exactly right, but it's a complicated question. On Twitter, for example, after there was a very public incident of many death threats made against a woman in the United Kingdom, activists encouraged Twitter to institute a report abuse button that makes it easier to report people who are harassing and threatening women. However, all of that button does is flags a user as abusive, kicks them off the service, and then all they need to do is create a new sort of anonymous profile to come back and continue harassing. And on the other hand, anonymity can be really helpful to women and others who need to, make their points made without sort of being personally threatened.
Right.
So it's difficult to know exactly how these platforms should balance those different needs.
Yeah, I thought your article really handled that well, because you speak to the cultural piece of this, which is how we as a society deal with it and react. And then there's a corporate responsibility piece. These corporations do make a lot of money off what is often free content. You make the point that some of it is also harassing or criminal content. Amanda, I also want to mention we asked not only you, but a lot of our viewers for questions and input for Amanda. We're continuing this conversation online, an important conversation to have there. You can go to MSNBC/the-cycle. That's MSNBC/the-cycle. Discuss this with Amanda, post more questions, and see, of course, the original article that we all wanted to flag.